You paid $88 for an Uber. So why did a cheap car show up? Well, I'm an Uber driver, and yesterday I made more money driving my Toyota Prius than I did in my Tesla Model Y. And the reason is this: Uber doesn't reward nice cars, they reward cheap cars. Hi, my name is Levi Spires. This is the Tip You in the App Daily Drive podcast. Today's Daily Drive podcast is brought to you by the Gig You app. Well, I have bad news. If you've been following this channel, my Tesla died. It became a brick. It has 158,000 miles on it. And it looks like it's not the big battery. It looks like it's the 12-volt battery. I don't know. I'm still waiting to find out from the Tesla dealership. But I'm an Uber driver and I needed to go make money. Yesterday, I did a full shift. I drove for 13 hours online, put 300 miles on my car, and earned $341. I did this in my Prius instead of my Tesla. Before I bought my Tesla, I used to have a Prius, and I still have it actually. And that was my main Uber driving car. And I thought I'd do kind of like an experiment to see what's the difference between the two, how much more would I've made. But first, let me tell you, driving the Prius compared to the Tesla, it felt like going from a spaceship in the Tesla to a bicycle in the Prius. The ride was really rough. It got great gas mileage, and it turned really well. You know, if I wanted to do a U-turn, it did really well. And no passengers complained. I still got 11 out of my 37 trips tipped. But the ride was rough. My butt is really sore today. The seats are hard. The radio compared to the Tesla is it's horrible. And here's the thing that freaked me out the most. It's hard to kind of imagine, but with the Tesla, when I get in and out of the car, it was really no big deal. But getting in and out of the Prius, it's lower to the car or lower to the ground. But the window, the door frame has like a frame around the window. And I swear to God, I almost hit myself in the face like 3 or 4 times getting in and out of the car because I would open the door and it was down low and this window would go right by my face. At the end of the day, I mean, we all have different cars that we like or dislike. And I know you probably don't like a Tesla, or maybe you do, whatever it might be. I just wanted to compare what would I have made if I would have drove my Tesla instead of the Prius. So now let's talk about yesterday in terms of the numbers. Let me break them down for you. My Prius ended up doing, like I say, $341 in revenue. My depreciation on my Prius is 10 cents per mile. My fuel cost is 7 cents per mile, and my maintenance cost is 6 cents. So I ended up having 23 cents cost per mile to drive my Prius. So my total cost for the day were $66. My profit on the day was $274. Now, comparing that to my Tesla, if I did the exact same rides in my Tesla, my depreciation cost is 15 cents on my Tesla. So my maintenance costs on the Tesla are 4 cents, and my fuel costs are more like 11 cents because I do pay for supercharging. But my cost per mile on my Tesla is 30 cents. So my total costs were $89. So my profit was $252. So clearly, without a doubt, the Prius is more profitable than the Tesla. If I were to break it down per hour, my profit per hour was $21 in my Prius for the 13 hours I was online versus $19 for the Tesla. In a 40-hour week, that would have been $840 versus $773. And then if I were to work 52 weeks a year, 40 hours a week, $43,000 versus $40,000. So I make about $3,000 more a year driving the Prius. And that doesn't include that I'm paying $1,200 a year for Tesla full self-drive. My Tesla has about $100 more a month in insurance costs compared to my Prius. So yeah, we're talking like $5,000, $6,000 more a year to drive the Tesla. So you're like, well, Levi, why would you drive the Tesla? And I'll get to that in a little bit here. But that's not really good comparison. What if I went out and got like the cheapest car? So I started shopping and I found a Toyota Prius for $5,500 on cars.com. Then I also found a Chevrolet Suburban. I wanted to find this spectrum. So the whole point of this podcast is, why do Uber drivers drive cheap cars? And I think it's obvious, but I wanted to do the math for you. Now, remember yesterday, all I did was the basic UberX, but I wanted to compare them across it. So let's take a look here. Again, the revenue is $341, still the same revenue, same miles, same time, etc. But the cost per mile on the cheap Prius, the $5,000 one, when I include depreciation on the vehicle, because it still does depreciate, fuel costs and maintenance costs, was right around 16 cents. So it's pretty, really, really good. Where if I had a Suburban, a black Suburban, doing all UberX, and we'll get to the Uber Black kind of stuff here in a second, I would have made $194. So comparison, the cheap Prius would have made $46,000 a year versus $43,000 a year for my Prius versus $40,000 for my Tesla versus $31,000 for the black Suburban. Okay, so now we've got like a baseline to go through these numbers. And I looked at things like depreciation, financing costs, and all this kind of stuff. So that's how I ended up coming up with all those numbers. So I wanted to kind of choose that spectrum. Why do Uber drivers gravitate toward the cheaper cars? Well, the entry cost is really cheap, but I don't drive in a market where there is Uber Black, a black SUV. The highest I can get is Comfort or Uber XL maybe, but we don't have Premium, Premier. We don't have any of that stuff here in upstate New York. But I went out and I looked. I said, well, how much does it cost to get an Uber from the Empire State Building to LaGuardia? Because I know in New York City, you can get a black SUV. Well, a basic UberX at the time when I looked was $88. So hypothetically, that Prius that we looked at, assuming it passes all of New York State's, the TLC type of requirements, that Prius would have costed $88 to you, the passenger. A black SUV, that Suburban, and it qualifies. I went and looked at the qualifications for the Suburban. That would have cost $176. So double. To get a Prius cost $88. I was thinking, like, let's break down these numbers. What would it have looked like? So the price was $88. The driver's take. Now my take is I make about 45 cents on the dollar. So if the passenger pays $10, I ended up making, at least yesterday, I ended up making $4.50. So I don't even get half the fare. But let's assume New York City is roughly the same. So the price is $88. The driver's take is $48 versus $96. It's a 10-mile trip. It takes about 45 minutes depending upon traffic. The tip. Now this was interesting. I think the tip would have been 10% for the UberX, and the Uber Black would have been 20%. So the tip is where the real money is, $8 versus $35. So the total revenue for the trip was $57 versus $132. Mileage costs are nothing. I think there's roughly a $10 toll in there. So the profit per hour breaks down to $74 for that 45-minute trip versus $169. An Uber Black SUV makes good money if you're in New York City and you're able to get tips and things like that. Now, that doesn't include things like additional tolls when you're deadheading miles, the deadhead time of costs of sitting in traffic, the volume of rides. I don't know how many Uber Black SUVs there are, but I imagine you're sitting around parked for long periods of time. So maybe paying for parking, paying for the taxes. See what else? Congestion pricing. New York City just in general is more expensive. But that's the spectrum. If you're an Uber driver, here's the takeaway. Either get a really, really cheap car or try to be a premium driver. I think that middle ground where I'm at is a tough place to be. I have a nice vehicle, a Tesla Model Y, and it's a great car. But if I wanted to make more money, I should get rid of that car, go buy a cheap Toyota Prius and make more money. I could have made $40 more yesterday, if not including maybe even more. So the question is, why would I drive a Tesla over a Prius? Because clearly there's no way that Tesla is going to make more money. Even if I might get one or two Uber Comfort rides a day, but whatever. I don't think I'm going to earn any more in tips. The tips are the tips. Tips are a reflection of the passenger, much not really the quality of the vehicle. Now, I'm assuming, by the way, that you're keeping your car clean and stuff like that. Now, if you've got a broken down car and it smells and it's rat infested, well, that's a totally different thing. I'm saying getting a cheap car and keeping it well maintained and presentable and a quality experience for the passenger. Well, I want to drive a Tesla. That's the car I would drive. If I stopped Uber driving today, I would drive a Tesla. It's the car that I like. It's the car I want to drive when I'm not Uber driving. I don't want to have another car. I already have two cars. I have a Tesla and my Prius. Those are the cars that I have. That's what I want to drive. Now you're like, Levi, your Tesla just broke down. I know, but we save money for these costs and stuff like that. But the Tesla's really, really nice. Yesterday, coming home after driving the Prius for 13 hours, the seats, it's just really uncomfortable. And it's so much nicer having the car drive itself. I'm not recommending you get any car if you're an Uber driver. I'm just saying get the car that you like to drive and make that work for Uber. I realize I'm paying probably, if I were to drive full time all the time, I don't know, I'm probably paying $400 or $500 more a month just to drive a Tesla. I'm not recommending it, just that's my choice. Now, if you are looking to become an Uber driver and you're going to go buy a car just for Uber, I would recommend either getting the cheapest car you possibly can and do UberX and figure out that way. Or once you're maybe an experienced driver and you have luxury type of offers like Uber Black SUV in your city, do the math and find a way to make it work, because there's definitely more money in that for you. But you have to, again, I found a $28,000 Chevy Suburban that barely qualifies for Uber Black SUV. I don't know how many of those are out there. I searched nationwide for it. So it might be a little bit more expensive, and another way to look at it. If you're a passenger, I think I would look at it two ways. I would either take UberX and be as cheap as possible and know that's what I'm paying for. And if I get a pro driver, tip that driver. If the car is clean or whatever, tip that driver. Or I would pay for a premium SUV or Uber Black Cadillac Escalade or whatever, some sort of experience. That middle ground, you're paying a little bit more, but you're not getting that much more value. So it's like back of the plane, first class. Pick or choose your battle there. Yeah. So what kind of car do you drive as an Uber driver? What kind of car do you look for as an Uber passenger? Real quickly, yesterday, I did a little bit of an experiment, by the way. I wanted to see what passengers tipped me and which ones didn't. Now it was kind of like I say, a fairly slow day. I took a lot of short trips. All my trips were like right around 10 minutes or less. I've always believed, and I've done the math a few different times, and I wanted to do it again today or yesterday, that higher rated passengers tip. Basically, if you're a 5-star passenger, you're more likely to tip than a 4.7 passenger. So I went through all of my trips yesterday. I did 37 trips. And here is what I found. Basically, only one passenger under a 4.9 tipped me. If the passenger was rated 4.9 or higher, I had about a 40% chance I was going to get a tip. Anybody under a 4.9, I was basically not going to get a tip. So 4.9 was the breakthrough number. If you ever want a tip or trick as a driver and you want to earn more money, find higher rated passengers. Now to your questions. Brandon asked, would you say you've become more generous tipper now that you are an Uber driver than when you were as an accountant? Yes, no doubt about it. You know, when I was an accountant and a business professional, I traveled all the time. I did business travel probably every other week. So I was taking, an Uber, probably 4, 5, 6, 7 Ubers a week or a month, I should say. I tipped, but I would tip like the minimum, $1, whatever. And that's still, by the way, really generous because, again, most times people never tip. But now I tip in abundance and I love it. I love being as generous as possible because I know the feeling that I get as a tip receiver. And I just like it. Now, I wouldn't tip for bad service, but it's really nice when I go to a restaurant. I don't go to restaurants very often, but I just tip $20 up front. I sit down and here's a tip for you. It doesn't mean that's the only tip they're going to get, but pre-tipping sends a signal to the waiter or waitress that, hey, I want to tip you. I just hand the driver $5 when I get in, as long as the car is clean. If it's, if the car is clean, the driver, it smells nice, I just hand them $5 and say, hey, thank you so much. And then we go on our way. So I love tipping now. Tipping is an amazing thing, and it changes your perspective on life. When you think about tipping as a burden and you hate it or whatever, it can be so frustrating. But now I like, let's just be generous and kind. I created a master class, and one of the guys, George, asked me, he says, how do you insure your car? I use USAA. In New York State, though, it is so difficult to find great insurance. I don't have recommendations for insurance. All I can tell you is that if you can get a rideshare rider policy, kind of like an additional add-on for that period one time period. But I've been with USAA for almost 35 years now, and they've always been good to me. And so I don't have any recommendations when it comes to insurance. I wish I had a better answer for you. If you're an insurance company and you want to sponsor the channel, you're the people I'd recommend. Speaking of sponsors, Red Tiger. Red Tiger, Jamie, she asked me, Jamie Miller says, does Red Tiger still record when the screensaver is in screensaver mode, when the camera goes into screensaver mode? Looking for a dash cam currently to cover the full inside of the car and outside of the car. I totally recommend Red Tiger. They are a sponsor of the channel, but their cameras are amazing. I've used other brands before. There's a couple things I like about the Red Tiger is that I can turn the camera without turning the whole camera to face it where I want on the inside, and the same with the outside. So you don't have to mount it perfect. You can just mount it and then adjust the cameras where you need them. And it covers the front, the inside, the back, and it also has an inside over the shoulder dash, or camera look. So it's really neat that way. And yes, it does record even though the screensaver is on. So one of the things about my dash camera, my previous one that I had, is that the screen just died. So it was on, but I couldn't tell what was going on. When I got the Red Tiger dash camera, drivers, for 2026, I want you to be safe, healthy, and happy. I want you to enjoy the ride. It can be frustrating at times to look, like, again, I got 45% of the take of the rate. So if a driver paid $10, I got $4.50 yesterday. And that can be really frustrating. But if you choose to do this job, do it and enjoy it. That's what I'm trying to do. And I hope you are too. So I really want you to be safe and happy with this, in addition to making as much money as possible. And hopefully today's podcast helped you out. My name is Levi Spires. Thank you so much for watching. I'm cheering for you. Bye.